the work that my mother left behind, which is intended to explain to us how our planet works, how we work, creation, everything. So I've got so much, I don't honestly know where to start, but we'll start with this one here, this time, Organization of the World. Right, my name is Marion Shattock. This is another installment of Stepping Stones to Awareness. And I'm reading you excerpts of my mother's work when she was approached by the other side. They reckon that they are men, leaders of the past, who wish to live in a modern world and wish us to have this knowledge about ourselves, how we're created, reincarnation, everything you've ever thought of. So I am just digging out bits of this enormous amount of work. You don't know where to start. It started in 1973 and went on until sometime around 2000, when my mother became unwell with Parkinson's disease. And I have more, but anyway, I'm going to read her stuff because hers is from the horse's mouth. So I'm going to start with this one, Organization of the World. This was written in 1991. Now it is 1991. Throughout the world, the media, which is television, newsprint, satellite, etc., the news is relayed to this world's people. Millions starve in Africa. Middle European countries are in turmoil. Beirut is a wreck of the beautiful city it once was. Ordinary people are pestered to give generously to a multitude of charities to help save the destitute all over the world. And in the Western nations there is recession, which is casting very great trouble into the lives of many who were hitherto comfortably off and without worry. What is the answer? Is there one? The planet is sick. Who or what is going to save it? Firstly, the caring observer needs to look at all the Western countries and all the young people who are the future, going through schools, leaving school, and finding it increasingly difficult to obtain any sort of work. What are they going to do? This is another pressing problem amongst so many. The poor you shall have always with you, Jesus was supposed to have said a very long time ago, and in this he was only too right. Especially as things are today, where the computer is changing the world rapidly, and in factories that once needed thousands to run them, only a mere handful are now needed to man the modern machines that will do work beautifully, economically, and swiftly, that not so long ago needed thousands. What becomes of the thousands no longer needed to produce goods that once were handmade? Somebody has to keep them. In this you have one of the world's most pressing problems of an emergent modern world. Only one person in any race of whatever colour amongst a possible 1,000 is far above all the others, and he or she will be the one that will invent the computer, understand the complications of finance, leadership, and all the other fields of endeavour that there needs to be to run a civilised world. Look back into the past, so castigated in films. Clive of India, Raffles of Singapore, Darwin, who travelled the world for greater understanding of his theories, which could have been more meaningful with the knowledge to be contained in this book. Sources, scores and scores of splendid men lie buried all over India, Africa and elsewhere, where people of those times realised exploration had to take place. Discoveries made and new trade possibilities opened up. Of course they did not go there to help the very primitive countries they visited, but to find new ways of creating wealth. Today, everybody owes very much more to these long-dead heroes than they possibly can know. Long ago, traders realized that you needed armies of various sorts and kinds to complete missions in these dangerous countries. Otherwise, death would possibly put an end to any endeavors that might be attempted. And in all too many cases, did just that. Look at humanity itself. In the more prosperous Western nations, what skills are there needed all over the world, which is becoming smaller every day that passes? Millions of anxious eyes today watch the constant reports of the devastation of rainforests, the changes that are now really beginning to become evident in the world's weather, global warming, and in truth, global warning also. This book is being written in England, which, with all its problems, is probably one of the best organised countries in the world, and has in the past sent more of its precious sons to try to organise the world than any other. The lack of so many splendid men that have perished in the past, and the sons they ought to have stayed alive and fathered, is still apparent even today. But they did an important job then, and there will be others in the future who will return to continue to try to bring order out of chaos that will otherwise utterly destroy the peoples of this planet. It's not the planet that's destroyed, but the people living in it, who in their ignorance pillage and plunder the vegetation, the trees, the seas, the resources of all sorts, until nature itself rises up in all manner of ways and destroys the population that are harming it. You have once again a fallow planet until it has righted itself, grown back its own vegetation, and tried to regain its own planetary health. Very splendid, brave men of the past understood India, Africa, and the Far East and the Middle East, and often came to love the people very much. They knew that it would take 100 years to establish civilizations in most of these lands, that above all technicians from the Western nations must go and work there to see that progress, however small, could continue year by year to create cities of great beauty all over the world, and bring peace and prosperity to countries where there would otherwise be only poverty, desolation, sickness, and death. When people have the knowledge, which is to be in this book, and a complete understanding of how humanity is created, it will be understood why the white man needs to go and prevent the black man from creating wildernesses that will all, in the end, help to destroy the whole environment, and will, in only a few years, start to seriously affect Western cities, countries, and the health of their people. People are not all the same, even within one race, and there are only a precious few who have the ability to inspire and lead, to create beauty, order, and joy, and above all, to order out of chaos. Many people realize that simply to send enormous sums of money to primitive countries where starving people die in the desert they have created themselves and continue to create does not work, never has worked, and never will. Many of the world's primitive peoples are nomadic. They do not understand how to create the gardens of the world, to grow their own food, to build proper palaces, places to live. Only the more advanced races of the world can send their skills to help him, in the long run, help himself as well. People of the past realized that without the exploitation of trade possibilities in countries like India, Africa, China, Singapore, Hong Kong, and in fact worldwide, there could be no prosperity in the West either. And this is just as true today as well. For this you need armies, not to wage war, but to keep the peace, and to give sufficient employment not only to those who are suited to military life, who have deep understanding of ceremonials of all sorts that give inspiration and stirrings of pride to the local people in all manner of different ways. Nearing now the end of this century, there should be millions of people living in deserts without... There should not be millions of people living in deserts without homes or any visible means of support. Only the Western nations can send those who have knowledge to guide them and help them to turn their countries into places of very great beauty. In every city now throughout the Western world, you have young people with no particular training for anything and no hope, sleeping in doorways, turning to drug addiction, petty crime. Eventually they have to be kept by the state, upon which already there is an endless demand for money. The nations of the West do not wish to waste money upon military forces. What do they need them for? They are needed now, as they were needed long ago, to protect those who must be sent to guide the destitute in primitive countries, to help, in fact, to save the peoples of this planet. All countries now are part of the whole, and the promotion of clean, beautiful cities for even the most primitive peoples to live in, and the care and nurturing of the world's forests and gardens, has its effect not only upon one country, but everywhere. If this planet had all the knowledge now at this moment that is to be given in this book, and with the determination resolve began the important task needed to save this planet and help to prevent the recessions that become inevitable as the world is now, it would take at least 500 years of dedicated labour and the mobilization of large numbers of skilled people to achieve it. We intend that this work will begin in the not too far distant future. It's the only hope for people of this planet. Who cares, many people will say. People only destroy themselves in the end anyway. And in any case, within 20 years or so, I shall be dead, gone to a far better place than this. This is the dreadful fallacy of believing in a sort of paradise which simply does not exist. The truth is that once people are placed on the rest planes, as they are called, within less than 200 years, they are asking when they are to be given another life. In fact, often it's a lot sooner than that. Any sort of life, rather than the tedium of nothing to do and nowhere to go, destroy the living planet, and there is nowhere modern, civilized, and hopefully beautiful to go and live in. Other planets there are, some still very primitive, and if this one is destroyed, many people may die. And wake up in a place where you are back with a horse and cart, no electricity, fetching and carrying water, and the harshness of lives that were lived here hundreds of years ago. I think I've got another page there. Maybe I think it's gone. Anyway, that's the end of that one. And then there's this one about the world's resources. They're all in such a muddle. This goes back to the 2nd of January 1976. As regarding the world's resources, actually, before I finish with the organisation of the world, what's been explained to me, what really needs to be organised is that all the young people in the Western world, and some of the very clever Indians, and some very clever Chinese also, we should be, all of us, getting together and working out what it is that we need. And these people should be not coming out of university with a great big debt and going to sit behind somebody's desk looking at a computer. But what we really need is a world service. So you enter the world service, maybe we need water engineers. We need to work out how the water of the world flows. We need to work out the stresses on the world. We need engineers. We need people who work out the sort of agriculture that is most suitable to each country. And people, Western people, or educated Indians, educated Chinese, need to go to the countries where they're needed, where people are living in abject poverty, and organise them to find out what sort of things would best be grown in these countries and give them jobs. You can stay in that position as long as you... But come out of university with a degree that's useful. I mean, I would have loved to have done a history degree. It's a passion of mine. But what would I have been fit for if I'd done history? Teaching or working in a library somewhere. So, you have to decide what future you want and what you're going to do. And there should be some sort of thing where we say how many people we need, how many doctors we need, how many nurses we need. Give young people more time to go into hospitals or to do a certain amount of caring during their education. And I think many of them would actually go into nursing and caring for each other. This is something that's very important. Or go and work in a garden centre and learn about gardening. Go and learn about how things are and then decide what you're going to do. Right, the world's resources, written in 2nd of January 1976. As regarding the world's resources, especially all those things that cannot be replaced in the world's surface in under several million years, this generation of humanity in all parts of the world must consider future generations and the hardships they will suffer if the world's oils, metals, woods, minerals, and all things that do not replace themselves quickly are used wastefully and indiscriminately. Let them remember in all seriousness that many of those who will make up future generations are only themselves, returned to live another physical life. Most of the suffering endured by humanity is never God's will, but only a suffering brought upon mankind by his own foolishness and ignorance. All those who themselves have children must consider their own feelings when the generosity and bounty they long to heap upon their children is disregarded, wasted and scorned, until powerlessly they must watch their children live in endless poverty, bitterness and anguish, all too often a self-induced condition, resulting only in blame and recrimination of all kinds, heaped upon the parents who have tried in all ways to encourage, help and succour their offspring. The result can only be sorrow on all sides, as the loving parents watch their greatly beloved children rushing endlessly towards their own destruction, as they helplessly stand by. So it is exactly the same with us. This is all was given supposedly by Jesus Christ to my mother. So there's an awful lot of almighty gods in here. So I'll just read it as it is. So it is exactly the same with Almighty God, who yearns always to give of his love, understanding and joy to his children. In this case, this humanity, which he has created, which has already been explained, and given humanity which only God can give, in the hope that they can one day come to join him in the joy that complete knowledge and understanding brings. That's all bollocks. There are in the world many wise and kindly people who watch with dismay as they see the obvious foolishness of those in power despoiling the world in which they must live, bringing about unnecessary hardship, a riotous muddle of misrule, poor government and bungling inefficiency of all kinds. What can they do, we cry, as they turn their backs on the inadequacies of their leaders, both religious, political and military? What can we do? They can do much if they will remember that they are many, and those in power are usually only a few, buoyed up by thoughts of their own importance, which can only be a fact if the general mass of heedless, ignorant people gives them those powers, and allows an impossible state of affairs to grow like an uncorrected cancer would do in their own bodies. Never at any time has mankind had more leisure to sit idly watching entertainments of every kind, to enjoy music brought to them in their own homes by electrical means, swift travel, and all manner of things which has come about in only the shortest possible time, when the whole millions of years of this humanity is considered. The ignorant people of the past, both poor and rich alike, were incapable of changing the inadequacies and injustices they daily saw taking place all around them, and for those who lived in poverty, the struggle for their very existence meant arduous hours of daily hard work. The wealthy lived in idleness and boredom, as they had little stimulation or chance either for spiritual or mental advancement in any sphere. And this they had one thing in common with many people of today, who, although not wealthy by their own standards, yet have many things available to them, which would have amazed and delighted those who lived in the greatest wealth of only 100 years ago. In the end, do these things bring them boundless joy, contentment and peace of mind? They do not. All too often they suffer mostly from boredom and feelings of hopelessness. They are interested in nothing, believe in nothing, and very often even take their own lives in a state of despair, which, were they to be questioned closely by a wise and pressing inquirer, they could not explain. Idleness and lack of endeavour are the root of many of these kinds of evil. If they were to take a greater interest in the world about them and to try and improve it, they would soon find their days all too full and much happier, a happiness self-induced which could in the ultimate grow and bring greater happiness to others. 90% of those of all nationalities, creeds and colours who are living out their physical lives on this planet at this present time will have returned again to live yet another physical life within 100 physical years, Let no one imagine that anyone has any choice as to the path his destiny must take, excepting in a total refusal to improve himself, to learn and absorb new knowledge, to progress, or to try to understand why it is that they must learn to live in accordance with the laws of creation, or accept the unnecessary hardship they place not only on themselves but on others close to them. Not all those living a physical life will return to live physical lives on this planet. Some never return. Some return in the spirit to guide the living. Some return after more than 1 century to bring about a special task. These are usually from the high planes with special skills and knowledge, sent to help and guide mankind. Many of those faced with sure and certain evidence of reincarnation will wish to know more concerning those they love and have loved in previous lives, in their present lives. Are they to be lost forever? Indeed, they are not ever completely lost. All of humanity belongs to genealogical families, and these genealogical families are very large, and although they bear direct relation to the human family as it is known and understood in physical life, the complete spiritual gene family is extremely large, and all those that belong to it are those whose physical and spiritual selves are made up from a certain selection of millions of genes peculiar to humanity. So it will be discovered that those who are close to each other in one life and love one another often return within the same family, but in a different context. A father may return as a brother to one of those who in a previous life was his own son. Sisters may return as mother and daughter. But as each life must be of a totally different nature to those that have been before, a child is never born to the same parents more than once, or a son or a daughter to the same mother or father, even with a different partner. All those living have others known to them in previous lives who often return for brief periods to give them help and comfort in moments of stress or trouble. The strength of humanity is the human family, not only physically but spiritually also. And as the human family grows through the century and learns more and more the selflessness art of loving and giving, so are its members strengthened and helped by those all around them who are living their lives both in the physical plane and the spiritual. This excludes all those who are for some reason at rest in places of restoration, detention, guidance or retribution. Just exactly as in this life, there are times when loved ones cannot come to give succor to those they love, as they are unable to do so. There is a brief bit here about the temperate parts of the world, and so I'll read that. There are now only a few parts of this planet that have a climate, something similar to that originally planned for the temperate, habitable parts of the world. One of these is California in America, other in parts of Africa and the Mediterranean countries. But even there, the real beauty of a temperate climate is largely lost, as the vegetation that once existed, beautiful trees, flowers, fruit of all kinds, plants, and all those things that live on Earth and have their effect on the weather of the world, have long since died away, as the climatical conditions necessary to support them have disappeared. It may be that some of those who live in nearby planets, once they realize that they are visiting a peaceful world similar to their own, may make contact with those in this planet. They still have such planets, plants and seeds growing in their beautiful world, and may be persuaded to give of their knowledge when they are sure of safety and peace. There's this also of the jungles of the world. Many of the areas which are now steamy, hot, unpleasant jungle in the hot centre of the earth were once deserts and lakes as God has planned that they should be. But greedy, careless mankind in prehistory, finding the speed with which plants would grow on these hot, marshy areas, quickly cultivated them with the idea of profitable crops which could bear fruit more than once a year. Little could they know or bother to understand what havoc they caused in the weather of the world, and the disruption of the original plan for the world, which has never been properly righted, even to this day. Only those with very deep knowledge, which may come in later centuries, could begin the work which could set the world to rights once more. Can we stop for a bit?